There's some predictable common mistakes that people make with the e-collar, and they are as follows: is that it's on too tight, right? Or it's on too loose, meaning so there's contact points. If it's on too tight, it's pushing in, you could get an abscess. The other thing is if it's too loose, it'll slide and you could get an abscess that way. So you have to be very mindful of the dog, and especially while the dog's getting used to it. Now, these are stainless steel contact points, but they also make titanium contact points. Sometimes, if the dog has stainless steel, they have an allergy to nickel, and that could cause skin irritation too. So don't throw the e-collar away. If you get abscesses or something, you really should keep an eye on the neck until you get used to it. And sort of like, for instance, another mistake that people would make is like, say you leave it on all night. It should only be on 8 to 10 hours. If you're watching the dog and the neck's cool, at 11 hours, you can probably leave it on, but make sure and take it off at night. If you do forget and leave it on, take it off, let the neck breathe, and your dog will probably be all right. If you make sure that there's no irritation, okay? Make sure there's no irritation and let the neck breathe for 5 hours or something, then you could put it back on. Now the problem being that if you do get an abscess or something, you can't use the e-collar. So it's a real problem. So what happens is your dog goes south because the dog becomes collar wise. They know when the e-collar's on and when the e-collar's off. So after a day or two, if you are like, well, my dog doesn't need the e-collar, you'll find that your dog's behavior is going to change. They're not going to listen. They'll be more apt to get excited. If the dog was e-collar conditioned properly, meaning you don't want to use the collar real high up. You can go higher up, but generally speaking, you want to use the lower settings. In a collar like this, you could feel it around 10. And for conditioning purposes, we use it lower than a human can feel it. So we condition the dog to this is like an annoyance, not its punishment. I'm not saying that sometimes you might go higher up, like say, if the dog is eating chicken bones, you're in New York City or something, and you want to train the dog that chicken bones, you do not eat stuff off the ground, you might go 10 to 20, 25% higher. But that's about punishment. That's not conditioning. So for daily use, we use this sort of when the dog's being good to teach the dog to be more compliant, make the dog work quicker. Not that, if the dog's just sort of meandering, well, I'm going to come to heel. That's not what you want. You want the dog to spin into heel, get to heel quick. That's what this is good for. It's good to teach the dog that it needs to be compliant. I know this is going to hurt, but dogs, the human emotion love, that's something that humans experience, not dogs. We love them, but they can't love us back. But what they can do is respect you and like you a whole lot. Think about it. Love is very complex. So all those complex human emotions, your dog does not have. They just don't. There isn't enough gray matter for the dog to have these human emotions. You're seeing animal behavior. You're seeing dog behavior, not like human love. Like when the dog is jumping around wagging its tail, it's excited. It doesn't love you. Don't give it food. Don't give it a treat. You're conditioning the dog to be excited. Okay? A calm dog can like you and respect you. And remember, respect, that's the equivalent of love in the dog world. I hope that makes sense. Now, the other thing about these things is that you really have to use them, and you have to keep putting the collar on. If the dog is functioning good and the collar's on, you keep using the collar to condition the dog. Once you're not having any mistakes, the collar goes on for another 6 months. Why? Because the dog is collar wise. If everything's going good with your dog and you take the collar off and the dog isn't fully trained, they're going to go south. They're collar wise. They know when it's on and when it's off. So keep the collar on, keep putting it on daily. And then if everything's going good for 6 months, you keep putting it on, then you can take it off. I hope this makes sense. A lot of people make these mistakes, they're rookie mistakes, And that's just how it is. If you're putting the collar on daily for the whole dog's life, but you're not having behavioral issues, it's fine. Just make sure that there's no neck irritation. And another thing that you could do, some dogs have real small necks. So if you know, like this, you can't really, this is for a Maltese. So they, you know, you don't have a lot of choice as far as like a bungee collar, or like say a puppy Australian cattle dog. When they're small, you have to use, like, you could probably use a quick release collar, but you have to wait until the dog has a certain size neck to start using the bungee. So you could use a bungee, and that'll keep the tension, you know, better on the neck. That's an effective tool. But remember, the bungee strap itself can be an irritant, so you want to watch that. So if the bungee, say you go swimming, you should take the e-collar off and make sure that the bungee is clean, and make sure and wash off the dog and everything. But make sure that the bungee is clean, because if the bungee moves a little bit and it has bacteria in it from a creek, once again, you can cause problems. The trick is to just keep an eye on the dog's neck so that you can keep putting it on and keep using it. You don't want to have to take it off because your dog is collar wise. If you do get a problem and you haven't been watching, and say you get like an infection, you have to go to the vet, you can't put this on at least for some days. But one thing that you can do is move it to the back of the neck, right, or to the other side. When you put the collar on, if your dog heels on the left-hand side, it should be on the left, because all your corrections are coming this direction pretty much. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, if you have it on top of the head, right? If you have it on top of the head and you do a correction for sit, you might bump the collar. If you have it over here, and you're standing here, right? And you move, you do a correction with the leash, you might bump the collar. That's why you put it on the left-hand side, because if your dog's heeling on the left, and most people are going to have their dog heeling on the left, and if you are dealing with somebody that just thinks that heel is right or left or in the general vicinity, you're dealing with a dog whisperer, and they're not really qualified to recommend an e-collar anyway. So you understand, it's on the left-hand side, so the dog's, you're standing here. Do you see what I'm saying? The leash will be here. You're not going to bump the collar. So you have to be mindful of that. Don't start problems and keep using the e-collar and conditioning the e-collar. It's done on very low settings. Another thing is, like, if you're, say you have your dog in a high collar and you're teaching it hold, just take this off, because once again, you might bump the collar.